senior road down, right ready to do. Like right above the building.
GST. That's right.
And they all went to Mississippi State correspondence.
I'm telling you, the rest, whether meteorology.
Well, you should see it, they had nice equipment and RTD stuff. That hospital.
My Lord.
Sorry, we're looking.
Yes.
What'd you say?
I said that was late nineties when I was there, Mississippi State. Now it looks like now the one took like
We
everything.
studied meteorology.
I was studying a lot of anything. Broadcasting.
I just missed you.
I was 98.3. My dad was school there, my sister, my
Oh my goodness.
So you must have
my whole family was up from one St.
from this.
That's how.
I must have remembered.
Gotta love it.
I drove a car.
How was that? He's fine.
But no, like, I was there for 5.5 years.
Yeah, I went back for, like on my weekend a few years ago, and it was like
Because it's
so
so
different. I said, oh my God, but you know what I, you know, one of the things that, the only place I had to go, Little Doobies.
Oh, yeah.
No, truly, no,
I was 20
representative.
times over there, and I was in school. They were doing ESPN first person. So they put me a game for game day. And first, they had after halftime,
No.
fed you in the stadium. So we're sitting there, the Little Doobies were here. And the guy was sitting next to me, and I was
Yes.
I was like, what are you doing out here? They have a nice spring there. Yeah, they have a little doobie. Somebody told me they have a little doobie out here. Come out here. He was so.
Yes.
But, yeah, all the ESPN dudes love that place. Took a friend of mine from here, and this idiot orders deep fried ribs that no one ever orders. I mean, like fried ribs. Look like a chicken, like a kitchen table.
I don't remember Little Doobie.
No, they're like new or something. They're like,
Oh, the old one.
they cooked all the meat.
Lunch Brothers has it.
Yeah.
Oh,
They were bad.
Yeah, that's the first one.
But I didn't even know that.
Yeah, okay, perfect. I hope the guy's still alive, but he told me, he said, if I find a restaurant here, he said, I can ship them to you, he said, I can't ship them to a person. If you find somebody with a restaurant, he said, tell them, basically call me, because what else, and I was like, right, well, just bring it right to my house.
Pay your $50 a year business license to get your tomatoes.
Is that all it takes?
Oh, man, I paid my $50 and I have my second business. And it saves me $2,000 taxes every year.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Right off on my case. Anyway,
I'm not gonna work for me.
all you gotta do is lose money, you know, the profits.
Right?
When you go to school in Mississippi?
9/8/33, December 3rd.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where are you there?
2009 to 2012.
So different now.
Yeah.
It's so different from when I was there, I'm sure. So like the Crestwell looks like freaking Ritz Carlton. The dorm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
And they want to get right here?
Well, they're gonna go to the front.
Oh, okay.
They just have to scoot over and then come back and say,
Yes.
I'm about to probably
Oh, really?
But first, pull Hawthorne, Rice, fire alarm, so we got a body.
I figured.
Was it? Yeah.
And my icon, bring in another chair. Bring forward another chair.
Forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, guys, we live. Yeah, you're blocking them.
Thank y'all for coming. Just give us a couple minutes. We have a family member.
Still make a way.
You have a slot yet?
No, I'll shoot them.
Okay. No. If she can make the minutes, so she doesn't have to walk so far.
I'm good, yes.
All right. Thank you all for being here. Good afternoon. I'm Maui Davis, one of the partners here at the Davis Bozeman Law Firm. I'm joined here by our managing partner, Attorney Robert Bozeman, as well as our of-counsel attorney, Attorney Brittany Dobbins, and last but not least, for Attorney Harold Spence, who will walk you all through the lawsuit that was filed today in the Northern District in federal court, bringing a civil rights action against the City of Atlanta, against the Chief of Police, and against the former Atlanta police officer, Kyrie Kimbrough. And I would like to start by just giving you some context as to how we got here. As many of you know, it is a requirement that when you sue any public entity such as the City of Atlanta or a county, that you provide them with notice, an intent to sue, in this instance, an ante-litem notice. We did that. We filed that, we provided that to the city back in October of 2023, now that we're in 2024, in October. As you all know, Deacon Holloman's life was taken on August the 10th, and so in October, after we had an opportunity to review body cam footage and video, we determined that there was a violation of his civil rights, and so we provided that notice to the City of Atlanta. We've got no response at all. And so last night I was thinking about this, and I was getting angry and upset about what I know that they're about to put this family through. Because we handle civil rights cases, we know that the life of a civil rights case could be 4 to 6 years. And so I was getting angry about this family who have had to bury their father, memorialize him, continue to go into the street, call his name, and demand justice, that they're going to, on this front, have to go another 4 to 6 years. But then I thought about it. Because we are a firm of faith, I thought about it and I said, God has to be moving. And so when I think about how God is moving and I think about what Attorney Spence and the civil rights team has done in putting together this lawsuit, I said, I understand that. I understand that when you get to count 5 and you read from count 5 on page 39, the next over 20 pages of what Atlanta police have done to Atlanta citizens, and the Atlanta brass have done nothing in the way of discipline, that's why this lawsuit had to be filed. It had to be filed so that Deacon Holloman's life is bigger than just even to his family. It's really about, will Atlanta policing change? Will the culture change? We were saying it at the very beginning. This is a cultural issue. That this officer, who is a young man, in no other situation would he speak to an elder of 62 years old in that context, except having been given a badge and a gun by the Atlanta police. And then, as we do our investigation, in addition to just being given a badge and a gun, he's also been given the nod, the wink, the yeah, this is how we do in certain communities. And so, I'm not mad. City of Atlanta decided not to respond to the anti-lighting notice. I'm grateful that we've had an opportunity now to pull back the veil. And we want these organizers to see all that they've been organizing, what they've been saying. They've been right. For all these years, they've been saying there's something that's wrong with this, the way policing is done in Atlanta, and we just provided all of the documentation, and Attorney Spence will walk you through that. You will hear from former City Councilman Derek Bozeman, because we would like for him to give some context as to how the city, if they wanted to, could have dealt with this case, and they chose not to. You'll hear from the president of the state conference of the NAACP, Gerald Griggs, about their commitment, state and nationally, to this family, but on a wider sense, to changing policing in Georgia and in Atlanta specifically. And you'll also hear from Attorney Tiffany Williams Roberts, who is the policy director at the Southern Center for Human Rights, who just wrote a very scathing article about how this has been dealt with and what activism has attempted to do as it relates to changing the culture of policing in Atlanta, specifically in Essence Magazine. And she'll talk about the work that Southern Center has been doing, because we see ourselves as a part of a social justice ecosystem. We're not one-off lawyers where we got a civil rights case and here's a chance for us to do a big thing. We see ourselves as a part of all of these different organizations that are gathered here, each organization representing a different aspect of our community. And we believe that collectively, we would put on the kind of pressure that's necessary so that another family doesn't have to sit like this. And they won't have to go through this 4 to 6 year process of depositions and motions and all the things that we know are headed their way. And with that, I'd like for Attorney Spence to walk you all through some of the high points, or for lack of a better term, really low points for the city of Atlanta of the litigation that we've had to bring on behalf of this family and the estate, who is represented by Attorney Tamara Wilson, who's present here as the administrator of the estate. So we are, again, grateful for her service to this family. She has a whole other narrative about the fight she's been going through with the city of Atlanta, just trying to get his property back. Basic stuff that you would think if they're moving in a humane and kind way, that they wouldn't have to jump through these hoops, but here we are. So with that, Attorney Spence.
Thank you, Attorney Davidson. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Harold Spence, and I'm a partner with the Davis Bozeman Law Firm. Today in federal court, we filed a lawsuit in behalf of the Holloman family for the wrongful death of Deacon Johnny Holloman. By now, we are very familiar with him. We know that he was an anchor in the community where he lived, a father, a grandfather, a deacon, chair of the deacon board, in fact. And while we call this lawsuit a violation of Deacon Holloman's civil rights, when you really distill all of this down to its essence, and when you look at the body-worn camera video footage that we've now all seen, this amounts to a disrespect and a disregard of Deacon Holloman's humanity. It's troubling to see that one human being could treat another as if he was an inanimate object. Now, we've seen the video. I'll just talk about this quickly. We know by now that there was a traffic accident, that Deacon Holloman and the other driver involved in this minor accident called in to 911 to report it. Together, they waited for over an hour for police to arrive. Their wait was an uneventful wait. The officer, Karen Kimbrough, gets there. He does a brief investigation and determines that Deacon Holloman was at fault for this minor traffic accident. He then tries to get Deacon Holloman to sign a traffic citation. Now, you've seen the video. Deacon Holloman never explicitly refuses to sign the traffic citation rather. What he does is what we lawyers do all the time. He starts pleading his case as to why he wasn't at fault. Apparently tiring of Deacon Holloman's protestations, we see on the video that Officer Kimbrough reaches out to grab Deacon Holloman. Almost simultaneously with his reaching out to grab Deacon Holloman, something else occurs. You hear Deacon Holloman say 3 times, "I'll sign the ticket, I'll sign the ticket, I'll sign the ticket." Those are objective facts. These aren't made-up fictional plots by a zealous and partisan lawyer. These are objective facts that appear on the video screen. Now, if his objective was to get Deacon Holloman to sign the traffic citation, he achieved that objective. When Deacon Holloman said 3 times, "I'll sign the ticket, I'll sign the ticket, I'll sign the ticket." Now, we know from the video that just before this, he had accused Deacon Holloman of screaming at him. Deacon Holloman explained, "I have a heavy voice." So in that same heavy voice, 3 times he said that I'll sign the ticket. And what should a reasonable officer whose goal was to get compliance with a signature on the citation have done? It should have ended there. Now, you'll see in this lawsuit, in the factual portion of it, references to certain standard operating procedures and work rules of the city of Atlanta. And you'll see that one of those standard operating procedures says that the goal in every interaction between a police officer and a citizen is to gain that citizen's voluntary compliance without the need for the application of any force, let alone deadly force. And another work rule says that in all encounters with citizens, the police officer should act throughout the entirety of that encounter in a manner to de-escalate the situation. So once you've achieved compliance where somebody has said, "I'll sign the ticket," that should end it. He should have allowed Deacon Holloman to sign the citation, and Deacon Holloman should have gone home. None of you would have heard of him except for those in his community who he serves, and we wouldn't be here today. But despite saying 3 times "I'll sign it," we know that that wasn't enough for the officer. He does a leg sweep on Deacon Holloman, taking him to the ground. He ends up striking him in the head with his closed fist at least twice. He ends up tasing Deacon Holloman. You hear Deacon Holloman say, "I'm an old man," when he gets knocked to the ground. An additional capitulation. He knows that he's no physical match for this 23-year-old. He's hoping that by saying that I'm an old man, that this will do something to the humanity inside this young man to make him stop this assault. But unmoved by Deacon Holloman's concession that he was an old man, Officer Kimbrough continued to mount this physical assault on him. And so when we say that this is a death that didn't have to happen, it's true. You've seen the video of Deacon Holloman says 13 to 15 times, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe," while the officer is straddling him, physically on top of him. And I guess at that point, Officer Kimbrough is applying his vast reservoir of medical knowledge to reach the conclusion that Deacon Holloman is malingering. But you can hear the video on the videotape that his voice seems to weaken in volume and tenor as he repeatedly says, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe." And we now know the fatal outcome of this, that Deacon Johnny Holloman died. And one of the most tragic aspects of this is that Deacon Holloman, before the officer grabbed him, Deacon Holloman asked to see a supervisor at the scene, and he began calling his daughter. He began calling his daughter Arnitra. He was able to get her on the phone. So she hears 17 minutes and 46 seconds of the interaction between this officer and her father. And it's very likely that Arnitra Holloman was on the phone when her father took his last conscious breath due to his interaction with Officer Kimbrough. So the city of Atlanta then does what it does. They put out an initial statement and they say that Deacon Holloman refused to sign the ticket. They want to make him the architect of his own death from the outset. And that's simply false. But this is the kind of false narrative reporting, unfortunately, that has become characteristic of the city of Atlanta in many instances involving cases of excessive force by one of its officers. Ultimately, the officer is fired. But he's fired because he failed to call a supervisor to the scene. If you read the statement by the chief of police announcing the firing, you have no idea that there was force involved. You have no idea that there was a tasing involved, that there was punching with the fist involved. You have no idea that somebody even died. So we're here with this civil rights lawsuit because this officer failed to respect Deacon Holloman's humanity. But in filing a lawsuit, we have to follow the standard format for these lawsuits, and we give various reasons why we believe that the defendants we have sued are liable in this case. We've named 3 defendants in this lawsuit: the city of Atlanta, Chief Darren Shearbaum, and former Officer Kimbrough. And it's good to be able to say that he is a former officer with the city of Atlanta's police department, because the streets of this city are surely safer in that he's no longer authorized as an Atlanta police officer to have on a badge, to carry a taser, to carry a firearm, to have the ability to deprive citizens of their liberty, to have the ability to apply even lethal force if the circumstances warrant. We're safer for him not being on the force today. I'm just going to talk quickly about some of the counts of the lawsuit that we filed. And when we're talking about a count gives a specific legal reason supported by facts why we believe these defendants are liable for the violation of Deacon Holloman's civil rights and for his wrongful death. It's a 63-page complaint. I didn't notice that until after we finished it. Had we been thinking about it, I probably would have cut it down to 62 pages. And for the symbolism it represented, because Deacon Holloman was 62 years old at the time his life was taken. Count 2 of this lawsuit talks about the excessive force. It makes a claim for excessive force under the 4th Amendment to the Constitution. Now, police officers are empowered to use physical force. And they often have to use physical force in interactions with citizens. But there are many circumstances in which they are not empowered to use excessive force. And those standards are well chronicled in the law and should be well chronicled in the training that police officers receive. Here, Deacon Holloman posed no physical threat to Officer Kimbrough, none, and that's clear on the video. He wasn't trying to escape or evade in any way. He didn't pose any physical threat to others. He wasn't interfering with the officer's execution of his law enforcement responsibilities. Yet, we see him taken to the ground, struck with a fist, and tased for no reason. This force was what the law calls objectively unreasonable force, so that every reasonable officer under similar circumstances would have known that he or she was employing force that was gratuitous and disproportionate to the circumstances that existed. So in count 2, we're contending that Officer Kimbrough utilized excessive force in his mistreatment of Deacon Holloman. In count 3, we allege that there was a violation of Deacon Holloman's First Amendment rights. Now, Deacon Holloman was attempting to make some kind of recordation of his interaction with Officer Kimbrough. He also verbally contested the determination that he was at fault for this collision. He had the right under the First Amendment to record his interaction, to broadcast to his daughter his interaction with Officer Kimbrough. He similarly had the right to protest, to say, I didn't do what you said I did, and to try to prove that he didn't. So we think that in part, the mistreatment that Deacon Holloman received was in retaliatory response to his exercise of his First Amendment rights. So you'll see in the lawsuit that there are 2 federal cases cited where the city of Atlanta has been told, if a citizen isn't interfering with your ability to undertake your law enforcement responsibilities, you can't trample on that citizen's First Amendment rights to record the interaction with the officer, to protest. And you'll see the cases cited. So the city of Atlanta has been told directly that you can't engage in retaliatory force to prevent a citizen from exercising his or her First Amendment rights. Under count 4, we criticize the city's unconstitutional official arrest policy, where it seems as though you can arrest a citizen who's involved in a traffic collision if that citizen is reluctant to sign the citation, and it's no problem with the city. Because we know in the reasons that they gave for firing Officer Kimbrough, they didn't mention one word about him violating the law when he arrested Deacon Holloman for his alleged refusal. And it's a hesitation, as we call it, hesitation to sign, because he never explicitly refused to sign the ticket. So this official policy that the city has now ratified, because they didn't do anything to him about arresting Deacon Holloman for hesitating in signing the ticket. And so we think that that is a violation of Deacon Holloman's constitutional rights as well. His arrest without probable cause or arguable probable cause because he merely verbally contested being at fault for the minor traffic accident. Count 5 is one of the most significant, and I'll say that for last, but count 6, you say that they failed to provide medical care to Deacon Holloman even after it was clear that he needed it. You hear on the videotape that Officer Kimbrough, former Officer Kimbrough, says at one point, he's bleeding real bad. Deacon Holloman wasn't moving, offering no physical resistance. It was clear that there was something wrong with him. It was clear that this officer had changed his physical status by knocking him to the ground, striking him, tasing him, ignoring his repeated complaints that he couldn't breathe. And under the City of Atlanta standard operating procedures and work rules, he would have had an obligation to provide medical care. He would have had a constitutional obligation to provide medical care. But it was simply illustrative of the indifference he has shown throughout his interaction with Deacon Holloman. We think that one of the most damning counts of the complaint is count 5. And Attorney Davis will weigh in on this also. I encourage you to read count 5 carefully, because what it does is give a view of how the city does business. In many instances, and let me just say this, and when we're criticizing the city, we're not saying that every police officer is bad. That's just not true. We know that most interactions between citizens and police officers end uneventfully. So I don't want to give the impression that we're painting with too broad of a brush. We're talking about officers who violate the law, who violate constitutional rights. And we know that when those kinds of transgressions occur, that more often than not, the victim of those transgressions, whether the officer is black or white, will be somebody of color that we know. So what the City of Atlanta does, often in instances where officers have been accused, credibly accused, of employing excessive force against a citizen, they have a playbook that they use. Often they conduct a cursory investigation. Sometimes they conduct no investigation at all. And then at other times that they do conduct an investigation, instead of finding the officer guilty of employing excessive force, they find the officer guilty of some other administrative type of violation. That was reflected in this instance. This was straight out of the City of Atlanta's playbook. You heard the chief say why he fired the officer. Not because of his tasing, not because of his brutalizing Deacon Holloman, not because Deacon Holloman died, not because he failed to give him medical care. You didn't call a supervisor, and that's why we're going to fire you. But this is what the city does. So when they're chronicling statistics involving excessive force, you'll have something added that says that he didn't call a supervisor. That statistic will be added to. But they were silent on the excessive force. So what you'll see in count 5 of the lawsuit, instance after instance, where we cite specific names of citizens who have been the victims of excessive force by City of Atlanta police officers, and the city has followed its playbook of sham investigation, no investigation, or some administrative violation in lieu of an excessive force finding. Time and time again. So we chronicle these over a period of years. Over almost a 20-year period. This has been the playbook of the City of Atlanta. And it has got to stop. The behavior or misconduct that we don't punish, that we don't sanction, we end up ratifying and encouraging, and it's almost inevitable that we're going to get more of it. And so this ratification of this bad behavior, and in this instance, not just bad behavior, but behavior that caused the death of another human being, it has to stop. And Attorney Davis, I know you want to weigh in on this portion.
Very, very briefly, we talk about culture. How what we just described, what's been laid out, we're encouraging you all as responsible journalists, go through, find these individuals, interview them, confirm what we've put in this lawsuit, that each of these individuals were brutalized by law enforcement and that those officers received no punishment of any significance. That is how culture is created. Culture is created just like in anyone's home. If your child does this and you allow it, then that becomes the culture of the home. They've allowed it. So while the chief, the city council, and the mayor's hand was not on that taser, their fingerprints are all over it. While they did not stand over the top of Deacon Holloman as he took his last breath, they were there because they created the culture that allowed this officer to believe that his conduct would go unpunished. But we're so grateful for the family and the organizers who said, no, not today. Who kept marching, who kept organizing, who kept up the pressure. Because without pressure, there is no justice for black folk in America. Even in Atlanta. Doesn't work that way. We gotta stay in the street. And so because they stayed in the street, he at least got terminated. Which is not, when you look across the board at all of these others, you can look at each and every individual. We're talking about dislocated shoulders, broken arms. This is the kind of level of force that taxpayers are paying these officers, and when they do it, there's been no consequence. So please take the time to do the heavy lift of talking to the people that are listed by name in count 5. 20 pages. 20 pages. Over 20 years of this madness. And it'll continue unless that culture changes, unless there's some serious consequences. So I'm grateful the work that Attorney Spence, the investigative work, and a paralegal Maya Beatty, as well as Attorney Dobbins have done to put this together so that it's more than just what happened to Deacon Holloman. It's not left in that vacuum, but it's put into the context of policing in Atlanta and what it has meant. I would, if Attorney Spence, I would like for Tiffany Williams Roberts to share their work around policing in Atlanta, because that will give it even a broader context.
Good afternoon. My name is Tiffany Roberts. Thank you to Davis Bozeman for having us here. I am the Public Policy Director of the Southern Center for Human Rights. We are a nonprofit law firm committed to decriminalizing race and poverty in America's Deep South. We've been operating for nearly 50 years. What I'd like to begin with is an assertion. And that assertion is that Mayor Andre Dickens, Chief Darren Shearbaum, and the Atlanta City Council are at the helm of one of the most deadly and dangerous police forces in the nation. And I say that grounded in data. Despite the city of Atlanta not doing its due diligence to maintain transparent records pertaining to police violence, data scientist Samuel Sinyangwe of mappingpoliceviolence.org has compiled data, and there are a couple of numbers that stick out to us at Southern Center. Those numbers are 83, 85, 88, and 100. We'll start with 83. The Atlanta Police Department uses more force per incident than 83% of departments nationwide, according to Mapping Police Violence. 85, the city of Atlanta arrests more people for low-level offenses than any other department in the country. 88, the city of Atlanta deploys deadly force more than 88% of other departments nationwide. And 100, the city of Atlanta, in the city of Atlanta, 100% of people who are unarmed and killed by the police are black. 100%. And on today, which is the anniversary of the day that a forest defender was killed over in Cop City in the name of building a vanity project to train police. Today, we know that Mayor Andre Dickens and the Chief of Police are engaging in a very transparent PR campaign to make the tactics, patterns, and practices that the Atlanta Police Department is deeply invested in, to make those not only commonplace, but to make them acceptable and desirable to the rest of the public. The people that are named in count 5 of this complaint represent but a sample of the people harmed by the Atlanta Police Department. And we have to remember that we are doing this work not only for families like the family of Deacon Holman who are mourning the loss of their loved one. We are also doing this work for those who survive and end up in jails, end up in prison, when only the mere assertion that any violence or disobeying the orders of a police officer are sufficient, right, to rob them not only of their lives, but often of their liberty. And so we support any calls from our friends at Davis Bozeman for there to be an investigation by the United States Department of Justice into the patterns and practices of the Atlanta Police Department. Southern Center has sued the Atlanta Police Department, the city of Atlanta, more than once. And many of those lawsuits aren't lawsuits that we do press about, but we are confident that if the press were to look into recent events pertaining to the Atlanta Police Department, recent litigation pertaining to the Atlanta Police Department, what you will find is a deliberate indifference to the gross constitutional violations of their police officers. And in many events, an encouragement of those practices and the interest of continuing this unacceptable culture of violence that the Atlanta Police Department has come to represent. We are happy to answer any questions about the data. We've engaged in a project about this data for over a year now, and we'll continue to do that because what we know is in Atlanta, we trot out a myth around the world. We stand in sanctuaries on King Day, and we say that we are people who believe that this family should not be grieving. But when that holiday passes, we go back to business as usual, and we begin to blame those of us who are mourning and struggling for our losses, rather than the city, the mayor, the police department, and city council taking responsibility for the role they continue to play in violence against Black people specifically in the city of Atlanta. Thank you.
Thank you. The NAACP was really founded as a Black Lives Matter organization when lynching of Black folk in America, particularly in the Deep South, was commonplace. And that lynching now has gone from vigilantes to law enforcement. And the NAACP continues to play an important role as a community-based organization across the country to lift up and amplify the voices of community members who've been harmed. And I'd like the president of the state conference for Georgia, Attorney Gerald Griggs, to just share briefly, and he'll be followed by Brother Honorable Derek Bones. Brother Griggs.
Thank you, my brother. I'm Attorney Gerald Griggs, President of the Georgia State Conference of the NAACP, and also the President of the Atlanta NAACP. And I stand here disheartened and dismayed. Tiffany and Molly and so many others, Derek, we've been at too many of these press conferences for Atlanta police. And so when I was watching what happened in Memphis, and the Memphis NAACP was on the front lines of Tyree Nichols, I saw the mayor issue a strong statement about Memphis. But then when I heard about what happened to Deacon Johnny Holloman, it seemed as though the mayor got real quiet. So I'm going to tell you what I told the mayor directly. Atlanta has a police brutality problem. The citizens of Atlanta were not marching in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, of course 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and continue to march in 2024 for more police training. Training can't address this. Only accountability can address this. The officer that killed Deacon Holloman has to be held accountable. I'm thankful for the Davis Bozeman law firm for always being on the front lines to do this type of accountability work. But it needs to be more than lawyers and social justice organizations doing this work. We need our politicians who are all in the pulpits on Monday quoting Dr. King to do the work of Dr. King the rest of the week, the rest of the months, and the rest of the year. So Atlanta's not the city too busy to hate. Atlanta is not continuing to be the birthplace of civil rights if it's not addressing its social justice shortcomings. So I had an opportunity to speak with the chairman of the board, Leon Russell, and our president and CEO, Derek Johnson, 2 days ago. We talked about the issues in Georgia. We specifically talked about this case. And the NAACP continues to stand behind this family in demanding swift action on this case. But not just this case. All of the cases in Atlanta. Whether that's Jimmy Atchison, Kane Rogers, Oscar Kane, Deatrick Griffin, Nigel Cullins. These are all the names that Atlanta should know, that the media should lift up. So when the mayor talks about we need more training, and I specifically ask him, when are you going to speak to these families and make these families whole? It's time to hold him to that. And so, again, on behalf of the oldest civil rights organization in this nation, 114 years, we've been dealing with lynchings a long time. The extrajudicial lynching by law enforcement have to be addressed in this town. And so we will stand and run with this family until the very end. Mayor, you need to make this family whole. It's real simple. We can't talk about the training or what officers go through without dealing with what the victims are continuing to go through. So we stand in support of this family. Mr. Mayor, you have an issue that you need to address immediately.
I'd like for the Honorable Derek Bozeman, who is a former city councilman, to give some context, because having been in government, he can share not just government, but in Atlanta city government, he can share what this process could be, and how he feels about where we are right now as a city as it relates to police violence. Brother Bozeman.
Yeah. Let me, first of all, say,
Could you closer to the mics, please?
let me say, it takes your breath to stand here. You know, I could understand if this was 1965 and this was Lester Maddox in leadership, or this were Bull Connors in leadership. It would make a lot of sense to us as to why we have to fight so hard for justice. You know, we talked about the celebration of Dr. King a few days ago, but Dr. King said there comes a time when your silence becomes betrayal, when your silence becomes complicit. And so either you're speaking up and speaking out for this family, or you are saying, I'm going to stand on the side of the wrongdoers. The city has two branches. It has a legislative branch, which the Atlanta City Council, and I was honored to serve on the City Council for 8 years, 2 terms. And it has executive branch, which is the mayor. While I was on City Council, I can tell you there were hundreds of lawsuits that came across my desk. And I would look at those lawsuits, everything from a pothole making knocking the front end loose, to officers beating people unjustly. The problem with that is I never went behind the names and asked about the families. And so to Anitra, her sisters and brothers who were on the phone with Deacon Holloman, and we got an opportunity to have a front row seat at a massacre. A massacre that occurred in this city. Deacon Holloman's blood is screaming from the roadside in West Atlanta. And what he's saying is, it has to stop. Not another one. My heart sinks to hear this attorney say 100% of those who end up dead are black men. And I'm a black man who happens to drive and live in the city of Atlanta for all of my 58 years. That officer didn't know Deacon Holloman. He didn't ask what quality of individual he was or the content of his character. He got out of his police car because of what Attorney Harold Spence said. Because there is a culture that says you can disrespect people. You can disrespect black men. You can disrespect folks on the South Side. Because guess what? They don't make much noise. And so, yeah, this process could be short-circuited today. The city attorney, all she has to do is sit down with this family and determine what's the value of what has been lost. The first thing ought to happen, she ought to sit down with the grandchildren and ask them, what was the value of your granddad's life to you? She sit down with these children, sit down with his church members, and ask, what was the value of it? You know, I lived through what I consider one of the darkest days, what I thought was the darkest days in Atlanta police history. When Atlanta police told us to our face that a 92-year-old grandmother on Neal Street was selling drugs, and they kicked down Katherine Johnson's door. Katherine Johnson wouldn't even open the door for her own family, but they kicked down the wrong door. The no-knock warrant that they were trying to serve was for the apartment, the duplex next to hers, but they kicked our door in. But instead of telling us the truth, they shot and killed Katherine Johnson. They handcuffed her behind her back, just like they did Deacon Holloman, left her laying on her front room floor. I went to every day of that trial because as a former city councilman, a person born in Atlanta, I needed to hear it for myself. And what I heard was what I thought was an aberration. But now we come to August of last year, and we see it happen again. They left Deacon Holloman on the side of the street like a piece of trash.
Oh, wait.
And so how do you fix that? You come to the table and deal justice and do mercy, and you ask for forgiveness is what ought to happen. But when you don't say anything, and when you don't talk to this family, the disrespect that officer provided that night extends to everybody involved. And so no, we're not happy. The mayor, the city attorney, the city council has said we do it different here in Atlanta. We want something different. Finally, I was sitting at home last night and watched Chief Sheriff offer $250,000 for the rest of individuals who burned up tractors at Cop City. You know what he said? I want to bring to justice all of those who break the law. Well, we got a message to Chief Sheriff. We want him to come to the table of justice. We want him to sit down and tell the mayor, our officers messed up that night. Not that they get an administrative pass. The city, the mayor, the police chief, they're all, in addition to their assigned duties, they are fiduciaries of the city. And so what does that mean? Their job is to not pay one dime to anybody. That's what their job is. That's what their job. They don't care whether they make this family whole or not. And so if a tractor is important to you, and you want to find the individuals that were criminal and hold them criminally responsible, damn it, come and deal with this family. And come to the table with justice and mercy in your heart. And the city should be asking and begging this family for forgiveness, not hiding behind a veil of their fiduciary responsibility, but saying we are complicit in the fact that we won't even answer a lawsuit or answer the mail or even pick up the phone and call is unbelievable, given the extraordinary circumstances of what happened on the side of the road in August. I say to this family, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to have been affiliated with a city that is so damn sorry that they won't even pick up the phone and call you all. I'm sorry to be affiliated with a city and a government that won't admit when they're wrong and just say, how do we make this right? How do we make it whole? You know, this city is better than this. Our city is better than this. You cannot run, nor you cannot hide. Because this officer was not, this did not occur at a Walmart. This did not occur on somebody's private property. This occurred on a public street of the city of Atlanta, and that officer was acting with the full faith and authority given to him by the city of Atlanta. And at the end of the day, the buck stopped on the second floor at City Hall. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. We also want to just lift up the organizations that have been standing with this family and the organizers. Present here is the Party for Socialism and Liberation. We just give thanks for their continued support. 10,000 Fearless has been standing with this family, as well as the Black Man Lab. We have the Southern Center, the NAACP, the Concerned Black Clergy, and there have been I Vote Hip Hop, as well as the Black Lives Matter grassroots organizing. And so there are a number of organizations that have stood with this family from the very beginning. They have marched with this family. Churches have opened up their doors to this family, as well as some of the members of the hip hop community have reached out and try to provide love and support. And so we are in it for the long haul. Again, we recognize that we're a part of an ecosystem of social justice that is here to change Atlanta. And again, we're grateful for the leadership of our managing partner, Attorney Robert Bozeman, who has put us in position to be able to fight this case for the next 4, 6, 7, however many years y'all want, we'll be here. Any questions?
Dennis Byron, Hip Hop Inquirer. We spoke about the officer being separated from his job by termination, but do we know, does he still have his post certification? Because he can go to another department in the state of Georgia. Has that been investigated, whether or not he still is part of the, has his post certification?
We are unclear whether he still has his post certification. We knew that he was appealing it. So we anticipate that if it's under appeal, they have not revoked his post certification as of yet.
So theoretically, he could be with another police department right now?
Theoretically, he could be somewhere else as we speak.
We reached out to the city of Atlanta. We heard back from the mayor's office. The mayor extended his condolences to the family and also reiterated that he called immediately for an investigation of standard practices. What is your response to that response from the mayor's office about this lawsuit being filed?
He did call. He called, he spoke with his family. He spoke with his family on a couple of occasions. He did call for an immediate investigation. We're still here. It's not enough, right? This is what we share with this family and community, is that this is a marathon that we have to see through the end. He saw what we saw on that video. You all saw what we saw on that video. This was a ticket, and their daddy's dead. And that's it? Like, what responsibility will the city own up to? That's the question that has to be answered. And we want them to be able to go line by line on count 5 and refute it. Say it ain't so. If anything is in that document that is not accurate, you tell us. But if from page 39 for 20 pages, this has been the behavior documented by the city of Atlanta, be the mayor that changes that. Dare to be the mayor that changes that. That's what we need. We need a radically different culture in order for this to stop. And there's a level of intentionality that has to be there for that to happen. You can't go along and with these folks who just more money in the police, more money in the police, and more money into building stuff. No. Hold accountable those who you pay tax dollars to protect citizens, not to kill them. That's our response.
And on Monday, the mayor stood up in the pulpit of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, where Attorney Davis and I are both members. And he went on and on bragging about the initiatives he's championing for the least of these. Also, after Deacon Holloman's death, he put out a statement saying that the death of any citizen in Atlanta weighed heavily on his heart. But it seems as though if there are financial and accountability consequences to misconduct, that you don't get this heavy weight on the mayor's heart. The mayor can do something about this. He's the chief executive officer of the city of Atlanta. And if he's going to suggest that he's taking the baton, well, one of the folks who's taking the baton from Martin Luther King Jr., and he's carrying on in Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy, part of what Martin Luther King Jr. would say, that with that comes accountability. And that may include financial accountability for the harms that you cause others. So, Mr. Mayor, you just can't adopt part of what Martin Luther King Jr. would say. Because Martin Luther King Jr. would tell you to be financially accountable for the harm that you've done as well.
Is there anything specifically that the family wants to hear from the police chief himself?
What the family wants is to not have to have filed this lawsuit. When we filed that anti-lighting notice, we put the city on notice, and they did not respond. So they've heard nothing. So there's a need to move forward so that they can focus on the criminal prosecution. But that can't happen now, and that's fine. I want to add, people who quote Dr. King and they go to the March on Washington, read the speech. He talks about police brutality in the speech. And he's not just talking about police brutality in the South. He's also talking, he had gone that same year in 1963 out to Los Angeles, talked to 35,000 people about police brutality. So Dr. King was anti-police brutality, right? He was against it. He was against police violence. That was a part of what he stood for. So don't keep taking him out of context for your own purpose. If you're standing with King, stand against police brutality. Don't keep lifting his name up around these other things, but the difficult stuff that you have power and control over, you don't discuss. Look at the speech.
One question, the GBI turned over his case file of this, investigating of this incident to the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. Have you all been in contact with the DA's office? Has the family been in contact with them? Can you all share what's been discussed?
Our last communication with District Attorney Fonnie Willis was when we viewed the entirety of the video prior to the release on the eve of Thanksgiving.
Okay.
So we met, we sat down. We intend in the next 45 to 60 days to meet with her to get an update as to the investigation into the prosecution, not just of Kyron Kimbrough, the officer, but also of the tow truck driver.
Mm-hmm.
So we asked that both of those individuals be prosecuted, as well as the officers who stood there and watched him and did not administer any aid.
Okay, and so outside of the mayor, did anyone else with the city, has you all been in contact with anybody else with the city, including the police chief, or
No.
was Mayor Andre Dickens the only person that called?
Mayor Dickens called. I know that there have been some city council people who have reached out, at some of the marches.
So not Shearbomb, he hasn't,
No.
he has, okay.
You know, the chief of police has not reached out to us.
Mr. Davis, how does this impact that criminal case? Do they go in tandem? And for the count 5 of all the people that you found that had similar instances, what does this do if this goes forward? Does this then allow the city of Atlanta to start changing policies, court ordered?
So I'll address the first part. I'd like Attorney Spence to talk about the impact of count 5, because it is significant. The criminal prosecution is on its own track, so it will continue to move forward. The civil prosecution is on its own track. We have a case in DeKalb State Court against the tow truck company and the tow truck driver. We have now filed this case, so that case was filed December 4th. This case is filed today. So those two will be on separate tracks. Again, obviously, if there's criminal prosecution, that could impact our ability to depose the officer. But we have plenty of folks that we want to depose over the City of Atlanta Police Department. So we can stay busy until the criminal matter is resolved as well. But on count 5, I'd like for Attorney Spence to kind of share the significance of all of the different instances of police violence.
In general, to hold a municipality liable for the misconduct of its employees in the civil rights context, you have to show that a custom, policy, or practice by the city was the moving force behind the constitutional violation. And that's important, was the moving force behind the constitutional violation. By citing all of these instances in count 5, what we are asserting is that the city's custom, policy, or practice endorsed at its highest ranks by the chief of police in failing to conduct adequate investigations, failing to conduct any investigations at all, or hiding behind administrative violations instead of addressing excessive force claims. We're contending that all of this constitutes that policy, custom, or practice that would allow us to successfully keep the city of Atlanta in this lawsuit. Often what you see with the city of Atlanta, if you're unable to show that there is a custom, policy, or practice that was the moving force behind the constitutional violation, they'll leave the officers in the case. They have a specific ordinance that says, no matter what the judgment is that you get against an officer, we can be like Pontius Pilate and wash our hands of it and won't pay it. We're taking depositions in a case right now. And we're asking officers we've sued 9 or 10 officers. We've asked each of them in their depositions, do you put your life on the line for the city of Atlanta every day? Yes. Do you understand that if we get a judgment against you for $1 million, that the city could decline to pay it? No. Nobody's told you that? No. You don't understand that your family's resources could be at risk because the city can abandon you because they've enacted a statute so that their abandonment is legal. And they're telling us over and over and over that they were unaware of that. And then, of course, you ask them, well, knowing that now, that we might get a significant judgment against you and the city could abandon you, how does that make you feel? And you can imagine what their responses are. We even had one recently to tell us, because this deposition was being videotaped, this is being videotaped. I can't tell you what I really think. So, count 5 is significant because the city knows that in most instances, it's going to get out of these civil rights lawsuits. We believe that with count 5, we can keep the city in this lawsuit in this case. So the first step toward accountability for the city is being able to keep them in the case so that the city itself, not the officers it abandons, so that the city itself might end up being financially accountable if this matter proceeds to trial for the harm done to Deacon Holloman and for the full value of his life. So that's why we talked about count 5 And that's why it's so significant within the context of this lawsuit.
Attorney Davis, with your permission, will anyone from the family like to say anything, make any statement?
I would. My name's Anitra Hollins. I'm the oldest daughter of Johnny Hollins Sr. It's been hard. It's been over 5 months, and we still don't have justice. When we wake up every morning, our new normal is this reality of the way our father was brutally murdered on the streets of Atlanta. And the reason I say that, I heard everything. I was on the phone with my father for those 17 minutes and 46 seconds. It's not a day go by that I don't hear his voice in my head. It's not a day go by that I don't see his face. It's not a day go by that I don't see and watch that play over and over and over in my head. Imagine listening to your loved one. Imagine listening to your father begging and pleading for help. Imagine hearing your father saying they can't breathe, begging. And then my daddy called out for God. Jesus, Jesus. When I think about it, and the fact that the city is not taking accountability for what happened to our father, it's like a slap in our face every time. Every time we do an interview, every time we march, every time we say his name, it's just like ripping the Band-Aid off all over again. It puts us back in that same space. It puts us back there. See, we gotta live with this for the rest of our lives. The city of Atlanta is gonna move on. The mayor's gonna move on. The chief is gonna move on. But we are stuck in this narrative. This is our reality. This is our new normal. When you see us crying, that's a place of hurt. That's pain. Something we don't wish on nobody. And can't nobody tell us how to feel. We asking for them to make it right. We asking for them to show up because they robbed us of something that they can't give back. They robbed us of our peace of mind. They robbed us of our father. They robbed us of our joy and our happiness. Not just us, but our children and our children's children. They cry out for their grandfather. My nephew had a whole conversation with my sister in the car about how he loved his granddaddy and how his granddaddy taught him how to do things and how his granddaddy would give him $1 every day and how he's hurting and he's 8 years old. 8! We got some of them that's 18 and 19 and they can't function. It ain't right. And we need them to make it right. We need them to stand up and make it right. Even when I read that article that Tiffany, she wrote, it was perfectly said. Do the South still have something to say with a mayor named Drake? Do we still have something to say in the South? We can't keep standing by, being quiet. No matter what you do, do something. Stand for something. They running all over us. And they think that it's okay because we're not speaking up. They think it's okay because we're not knocking down doors. But we gotta change this narrative because it's not gonna get better. Just like Derek said, it could have easily been one of us. They don't care. We got to make them care. We got to make them see. I like what Attorney Spence, when he put it in 5. Everything that we need, and 5 is significant. But spiritually, 5 means grace. And I know that God is even in the midst of this. Because he's still showing my family grace. We're gonna get justice. I know that to be true. But the city, they gotta come correct. And we ain't gonna just continue to sit by and stand by and let them feed us this BS. Because we know this is exactly what it is. Our father meant so more to us than just who they thought he was. Who they thought he was. See, one thing about it, we can't take the fact that, first of all, he was a man of God. And not only that, he was a black man that paid the streets of Atlanta. He worked, he built families, he kept families together. That's the kind of man he was. And his blood is on the city hands. And there's no way they can wash it off until they give us justice. One of the reporters asked me and my sister, are we at peace? I told her, hell no, we ain't at peace. And you know why? We got hope, but we don't have no peace because it ain't no justice. And until we get justice, it's not gonna be no peace. We need that. And we need y'all. Continue to put his story out there. Continue to say his name. Continue to do the work that you're doing. That helps us to continue to fight in this fight of justice. We got to continue to do it. We thank each and every one of y'all for always being there, always coming out, always supporting us. But at the end of the day, the city needs to answer us. They need to tell us something. Because we looking for somebody to come forth and say, you know what? This family, they right. Accountability needs to happen. And it needs to happen soon. It's been 5 months. 5 months. And we still feel like we're sitting and nothing has happened. So again, I ask you, if you in the South, do you have something to say? Say it. Because we got a whole lot to say. Thank y'all.
Hello everyone, I'm Johnny Goldman Jr. You know, it's hard for me to even go through day-to-day basis every day, but I think about my dad. I hurt, I can barely sleep, I'm going great. You know, and it's so shocking still. I mean, it's like it's a dream that I gotta wake up and live this new normal. It's so much I want to say though, like, and I'm praying for justice. We all live with my sister. We thank y'all for y'all support. And
Hi, my name is Santish Cruz. William. I thank all of y'all for standing with our family. My dad mean a lot to us. Birthdays, holidays, don't mean the same no more. I just had a birthday January 15th. You know what I want? On the phone with my oldest sister crying. I don't even want to celebrate birthdays no more, let alone holiday. That's my dad's birthday coming. I don't have the phone, I don't have my dad to call me and say happy birthday. I waited, even though I knew my dad was gone, I waited on my birthday just passed. I got my phone and waited till 7:30 because that's what time my daddy called me every year. He called and said happy birthday, girlfriend. I didn't get that call. That hurt it. That hurt it so bad. And all I'm asking for is y'all do the right thing, City of Atlanta. Show us what justice look like. My dad's life may not matter to y'all, but it matters to us.
That's right.
I have a son that's in the 12th grade, cannot even finish his education. Because he had to deal with this, the loss of his grandfather. I have to hold my 18-year-old every day and tell him it's gonna be okay. I don't have the answer for him, because you know what? City of Atlanta won't give us the answer. All we asking for is justice. Show us what justice looks like. Say my dad's name, Johnny Holloman.
Johnny Holloman.
And
one more thing I like to say. And by me being junior, by them killing my dad, it's like they killed me. And it's hard to even describe how I feel. But it's like they killed me. I'm hurt. I'm destroyed, like.
Hi, my name is Matika Burdette. I'm Johnny Holloman's daughter, the baby. I just want to ask the city of Atlanta, when is enough enough? When is enough enough? I mean, we've been dealing with this for 5 months, 5 months now. We have had countless days of not getting sleep. Again, like my sister said earlier, my 8-year-old, I've been waiting on him to actually talk to me because I know him and my dad had a close relationship. And he the other day, it was crazy, we was just driving and he finally opened up and he was like, Mama, you know, I miss Granddad. And I'm like, I miss him too. He said, Mama, he said, you know, he said, Granddad taught us so much. He did so much for us. He said he just loved us so much. He said, I just hate he gone. If your 8-year-old talk to you in a way, and you really lost for words, I had really nothing to say but to hear this baby out. It just, like, I'm crying, I'm driving. I have so many days I call my sister, and I'm like, riding somewhere, I forget where I'm going, or I'm just breaking out in tears because I found out grief has no, when I say it has no timing on it, it has no expiration date, it has no expectations because it hits you whenever it want to hit you. Andre, you say people in the South still, I mean, they have something to say. We should have something to say because people not saying anything to Drake. We should have so much to say, and not just about our dad, but all the ones that went before him, all the ones that, you know, still living and still their families going through the things that we're going through or don't been through the things that we're going through. We asking for transparency for us, giving us not just answers. We got that. We want justice. We want justice today. We want justice in a way that other families and other people can identify with us and know what justice really looks like. Because we're lost. We're lost. And I just want to say thank everybody that's been supporting us. I think everybody that, you know, been running around me and my family, loving on us. We need that right now. And I just ask that, you know, you guys keep us in prayer and thank y'all for everything that y'all have been doing.
Again, we want to thank the community, the students over at the Atlanta University Center have been incredible. Students at Georgia State and Emory have all been supportive of his family, reaching out to them, in addition to these community organizations and churches. And so, again, thank you all for being here, and we will please track the litigation, watch the motions to dismiss to the file, watch the gamesmanship that will be played throughout this with this family. They'll treat it like a case, but it's up to us to remind them that it's a family. Thank you all.
4:30.
Oh, we're right now. Oh, I got that text in the phone.
Johnny Coleman Jr.
I know yeah. Oh, wait, did he play really well? I think he probably the best quarterback
Get the mic back.
Do what now? He's going out with some
I appreciate it.
Good. He's trying to get.
Oh, good. All right. Yeah, we got another copy for it. I'll have to break it down.
My house.
Get your information.
Say that again? Since you live we all have our they either have a bunch of oh, really?
What's up, young lady? How you doing? Yeah, appreciate you being here. What's up, brother? Good. How you doing? You good? Yes, sir. Yeah, everybody else that they have.
Oh, you can email me the PDF. Just email me the PDF.
You want that, or do you need to share the hard copy?
Send me the PDF and I'll just pull it up.
All right, I'll have an email.
No, we're international.
Yeah, so did they give you, okay. But did you get the same email? I'm saying, did you they call you back, everybody's email, and they want to send them back. Okay, so when you come up, everybody is here.
But he's saying, so that's the update.
Good to see you. I got,
That concludes the press conference. We'll be doing a recap tonight at around 6 p.m. So make sure you tune in. Again, I'm Billy Warren. We're live here in Atlanta for the press conference and the lawsuit filed against the city of Atlanta.
Thank you. See y'all.
All right, take it. Stringer. What's up? Yeah, I'm gonna let people get out of here first.
Sweating and then so go outside and freeze.
Yeah.
It's like, I was like, I know.
Where did Brittany go?
Hot, cold. Doing stupid hot shot. It's gonna get you sick. So I'd be off for 3 days and be sick and miserable. Didn't get well enough to come back to work.
All right, guys, we are ending this live. I thank everyone for joining.